Okay, I'm back. Sorry, my camera crashed. All right. So the last part that we were on is talking about every child is different. One thing that I want you all to please keep in mind is that your children, though they come through you, you don't own your children. They are human beings that are, even though under your care, they're still human beings who are independent of you. Your job is to mold them. Yes, but you also have to understand that each child comes into this world with a different personality and different experiences than you. There may be some things that you don't really understand about your child, or even about how to get through to your child or to relate to your child. And another thing that my friend Desi said is that, yeah, beating is easy. You know, investing the time to really sit down and talk with your child, or to have the monopoly night or family outings, family gatherings, or really just really sitting down and talking to your children, finding out what's really going on in their world, finding out the best way to relate to them as a human being. Everybody, you know what, you would be surprised. Children and their interpretation of things, even from starting very, very young, is very sophisticated. The ideas and concepts that you don't think that they grasp, they're grasping. And if you sat down and you really had a conversation with your child, I would say even from 4 on up, you could have a conversation with a 3-year-old and really find out, you know, what's going on in this 3-year-old's world. 4 and up. But you know what? When you get to a child that's 13, who got big grown breasts and is bleeding from her vagina and stuff like that, you're talking about a young adult here, a young woman. Back in olden days, she didn't, even in some countries, they're marrying off at what, 13, etc. So it's like, you have to realize that you're dealing with a person who has a whole set of experiences that are different than yours, and you would be surprised if you really sat down and had a conversation with your child. Like this young lady, I would really love to find out what it is what's going on with her. What's happening? Why does she feel that she needs to do this? Obviously, wherever she was a better environment for her, so she felt, than being at home. I listen, how many other, come on. Whatever was going on at home must have been far worse than wherever it was that she was for 3 days. Must have been. Whatever penis it is that she felt that she was out there getting or looking for, obviously that was a lot better than what was happening at home. So it's like, when you have a child that big, what do you do? What is your plan? What are our plans? We all know that teenagers start going a little, kids start going a little loco when they get to teenage years. What's your plan leading up to that? What are the extracurricular activities that you have them involved in? What are the after school activities, the band, the workshops, the this, the that? What are they participating in? Because when those hormones start raging and they have nothing, no other outlet except twerking or hanging out or stealing clothes or whatever, and you know, so much going on in that household. The girl got a weave. It wasn't a fresh weave, so the weave been in for quite some time. So she's 13, got a weave living in your house, and you're calling her B's and H's. And look, let's go on to my next point. We already talked about my point number 7, that violence is love and love is painful, and we've been confusing our child. Number 8, I'm glad I did write a list, otherwise I would have forgotten this. We have to remember that every child is born loving. Every child. And every human being is striving to get back to love. Even you, me, you, everybody is always constantly striving to get back to love. And the things that we do in response to love. Either trying to get back to it, being burned from it, afraid that we'll never get back to it, longing for it, searching for it, or having been rejected by it, or whatever. We're all trying to get back to love. So when we start talking about cause and effect and what has happened in this girl's life, okay, she started out as a child, and as a child, she was the epitome of love, just bursting in her happy jubilance. What happened between then and when we saw the video? How many times has she been called B and H? What happened to her when she was 10? Who may have touched her? When did she lose her virginity? Who are the friends that she's hanging out with? If it takes you 3 days to find your daughter, so I don't know, something is not right. Obviously, she don't want to be found, and if she doesn't want to be found by you, there are inherent problems that exist in that whole family. A child should want to be at home with their parents. 13, we're not talking about a 16 or 17-year-old who can work and all this other stuff. So this girl would rather fear out there. She would fear, F-A-R-E, out there on the street with all types of penises and all types of everything and the unknown, rather than be at home with you all. That should be a wake-up call that something is not right. Let's go on. Number 9. Violence as a part of our culture. You know, with all of the if we look around at ourselves as Black people, we come from a very violent culture. This Black American culture is very violent. The Black on Black gun violence, the Black on Black crime, and it's like, for some reason we just don't want to. It's like, at some point the cycle has to be broken. You know, it's like you send your child out into the world and your child starts fighting and carrying on. But meanwhile, your response to them fighting, carrying on, is to beat them and whoop them and more violence. It's like, when will we learn that there has to be, that perhaps there could be some other way? Perhaps there's another way. I mean, is the violence working for us? I mean, we Black Americans, we love to whoop our kids, don't we? But is that working? When this violence continues to perpetuate and to burst out of the seams of our culture, where we're gunning people down, robbing people, shooting, carrying on with blatant disregard for Black life. And it's like, the way that we treat Black life just spills over into the rest of society. It's like, where we get all up in arms when a white person kills a Black person. Okay. For every child that Dunn killed, there was a Black person who killed 17 more that day alone. Come on. Come on. It's like, is it working? Is beating working? And I wanted to add this. Right? My associate, my friend Desi, also added this to the conversation I had with her earlier. And she's like, she's surprised that people are so adamantly against considering another option. And it's like, I really don't understand. It's like, beating is the go-to, but it's not working. It's not working. And it's like, people don't want to use their imagination that there could be another way. People are like, oh, timeouts ain't going to work in this case. She's 13. Timeouts are for toddlers. You start with the timeouts from when they're young, getting children to listen and to rationalize and use their minds. And I'm going to tell you, timeouts do work. Start that when they're 2. Start when they're 2 and you'll see a huge difference. Timeouts work. But you can't start a timeout with a 13-year-old by then. And if beatings haven't worked up until for 13 years, you're talking about a big person who knows how to speak, knows how to talk, and is bleeding from between her legs. She's old enough to get pregnant, but you still think that she should be beat and beat down by you as a form of love. When will we start? When will this end? Some people talking about, oh, I got beat up until I was 25. Oh, really? At that point, it's domestic violence. It's no longer beating at that point. You going off to college, coming home, still getting beatings, smacked all up in your face, hit with a belt. And some people were like, oh, belt is not abuse. And I told this story about when I was in college, and some of my friends from college who watch this will know exactly who I'm talking about. There was a guy, he didn't go to our school. He lived in the apartment complex of some of the guys who went to my school. And he would hit his girlfriend with a belt. And at the time, it was the idea of it was so preposterous and so ludicrous to me that I was like, that can't possibly be. How do you hit a grown person with a belt? But there are people out there, grown men, grown women, who hit other adults with objects. hit them with umbrellas, hit them with vase, glass vases, hit them with belts and wire hangers and all types of stuff people beating their partners with. And it's not supposed to be abuse because they're using a belt and not their fist. That man looked like he was acting out of anger. It's not like it was so much so. This whole situation was so wild and so out of control that they couldn't even do this at home. You just see a person on the street and just start whooping them. That means you're whooping out of anger. You really need to take some time to calm yourself down and deal with the situation. Have a structured plan for discipline. And then really, what was your plan leading up to the time that they were 13? What did you have to hedge against that happening? You know, come on. What's the number, the other one that I wanted to... Oh, cause and effect. 1 in 3 girls. Oh, good. Video done. Oh, no, there's one more point. One more point. Okay. And this was the point that I made on the video. And then we're going to get out of here after this, really. How do you teach a person to value and respect their body when you're disrespecting it yourself? How do you, by example, teach a young lady that no man out there in the street is supposed to hit her, but only the man who says he loves her inside the home is supposed to hit her? And then they'll be like, oh, well, I pay the bills around here, so I get to do this. Or, oh, I'm bigger, so I get to hit you. Okay, so then when you go out into the street and you find a man who's paying the bills and who happens to be bigger than you or stronger than you, then that means that it's okay for him to hit you. It's like you create this pattern where you create the normalcy of this beating. And so many of us think that we're all right as a result of the beating. But when I really look back into my past, and I realize how my dating choices, like somebody had the nerve to say, it's better he beat her than for her to grow up and be 35 and single. As a matter of fact, au contraire. It's the inability to be able to trust men, to be able to let down your guard and feel that the man who, that number one, there are twofold problems that come from this. One, thinking that abuse is love and getting into relationships that mimic a pattern or a feeling, liking to argue, liking to scream, liking, if it's too calm, it doesn't feel right. Because somewhere along the line, you learned that love felt chaotic and love felt violent. So one-fold that, then twofold, not being able to really let down your guard, not being able to really fully trust men and that they will take care of and support you. And then let's add a third one into it. Being so afraid of violent men that you go and you date men who are the antithesis of what violence would look like. So you date weak, meek, I don't want to use the L word, loser. You date weak, meek men who are quiet, who you then become the aggressor of, because you don't want any situation that looked like the one that did when you were a child or growing up. So you go find the complete opposite of that. And then you wonder why this person can't really step up into being the man of the house, because number one, you may not want what comes along with being the quote unquote man of the house, because in your mind, you think being the man of the house means being able to boss you around, being able to push you around, subjugate, denigrate you if he so chooses. So the very first moment that you see any behavior from a man who is behaving in a manner which is in the masculine, you shun that, because you don't want anything that mimicked what was going on in your life growing up. So there are a lot of different things. So many of us think that we're okay, but are we really? I know personally, I did not like getting hit. I didn't. You know, everybody has a different personality. Everybody does. Me, my personality, I felt that I could have been spoken to. People could have had a conversation with me. Some of those beatings that I got were misunderstandings. Some of them were misunderstandings. And if people would have spoken to me like a human being, had a conversation with me, then we could have really come to some level of understanding. It's like you don't really expand a person's consciousness and teach them how to think and how to navigate the world on their own when you're beating them with no explanation, no conversation, and no real catering to what it is that they possess in their natural personality traits. Really, if I could have understood. And so, so I employ that with Tiara. I talk, talk. And then I'm sure you remember when you were growing up, sometimes the talking was worse than the damn beating. You'd rather just get the beating over with because it's over, the one and done, over and done. And then you go on from there. So that's my whole video. I would love your comments below. Give me a hug. Oh, I love you all very, very much. Go out there and love one another, and most importantly, love yourself. I appreciate your comments below, but I'm on the other side of this. And if you know what, listen, I understand that we do have to enforce what it is that we talk with our children, because that look, you look at your child and they know that they better not mess around. Okay. But then there will come a point where they will test you, right? And you may have to take it up to the next level. And if there is, you know what, it comes on a case-by-case basis. You really have to know your child. And I feel that at this very point, at this very moment, right, I know that there will come a time where you may have to push back a bit on that child, but I feel that that should be the last resort. And I feel that it should be done in a disciplined and adult-like manner. And I believe that there should be a conversation involved with it. And I believe that the conversation should come fruitfully beforehand. They should come fruitfully beforehand. Because, listen, I wasn't going to say this, but I might as well add this to the conversation. Tiara turned 12 last year, and we spent some time down in the Caribbean. And, she just turned 12. Little girls, they start changing and stuff like that. And I haven't had to spank Tiara since she was, I'd say, about 3. And even then, it was only as a last resort. And then after that, you can speak to her and she can understand and she can rationalize, and you can get her to behave by just having a conversation with her. But this one particular time, she was really showing out. How kids they want to impress their friends or whatnot. And I'm looking at this young lady who is changing before my very eyes, getting a different perspective, body parts changing. This is why I don't put Tiara in my videos anymore, because now she's a young adult, and I think that when she was a child it was different, but now she's blossomed, and so I don't put her in my videos anymore. I don't. So she was really acting out, and I'd had several conversations with her, and here I am, I'm looking at this big girl. She's big now. I'd say she's just a few inches shorter than me. And I'm looking at this big, because she just keeps growing. I'm looking at this big girl. This was last year, right? So I'm looking at her, and she's grown, she's solid. And so, because she and I were shaped very much alike. So she's 13 and she's solid. Well, she's 12 and this was last year, she was 12 and she's solid. And I'm looking at her and I'm like, now I have several options, because I had a conversation with her. I'd had several conversations with her, and and I really got a chance to understand where she is right now in terms of her mental development, and the way she interprets certain things, and even certain preferences that she has, and certain things that she didn't like that were happening. So you really get to understand the way a person processes information, the way your child processes information when you have a conversation with them. And you have to understand that this is a person who was born into this world with a personality that's different than yours. So get to know your child and who they are at different stages, because one day that child will become an adult and you won't really understand how they got from here to there. But nonetheless, So I'm looking at her, and I had had several conversations with her about the same thing, and she wasn't listening. And so I felt that I had really was running out of options, right? And I got to the end of the talking cycle because I tried it several times first, and she was still not behaving in a manner that I felt was representative of who she is and should be. And I threatened her. I did. I was like, you must have forgot who I was. I'm like, you must have forgotten. And I told her what I was going to do to her if she did not straighten up. And it did not take me putting my hands on her. It took the energy vibrating off of me that she knew that I was serious. She knew that. And that was all it took right then. And instantaneously, a rearranging of behavior. And it didn't take me going into a space where I had to start victimizing her, jumping on top of her, choking her out, or beating her and all. Because when they get that big, what do? You still grab the belt and start whooping them, or start grabbing them and pushing them up against walls and all this other stuff. It didn't take all of that. It took the threat of escalating it to a different level if she was not willing to listen to words. That's what it took. And from there, no more problems. No more problems. Done. One and done. One and done. And this is going to be a very trying time now because she's turning 13 and things are hormones are going to start to fluctuate. So you have to brace yourself as a parent. What is it that you're going to do? What are you going to do? And what is your plan? What is your plan? Because kids will be kids and teenagers will be teenagers, but what are you going to do to be preemptive to that? What is your plan of disciplining? And then consistency with the disciplining. That's all I'm going to say on that. And I hope that this video touches somebody, because last year I was like, okay, I believe in corporal punishment, but at this point I'm so far left with it now, or so far right. I don't know which direction is the conservative side. I'm so far right at this point that I feel that it should be the last extreme measure. And I'm not really sure exactly why people are like, oh, she has to be disciplined. There's so many different types of discipline. There are so many different types, and it's up to you as a parent to be or a guardian to be creative with the discipline, whether that means taking away certain privileges, or whether it means punishment, not being able to go out, taking away certain something. One thing that I will say before we go, and I want to just add this last thing, and I'm going to leave on this note. When it comes to taking things away from your child, don't take away the things that will benefit them as a human being. Like I have some friends who are like, oh, you know, my daughter's not acting right. I'm going to take her out of dance. No, honey, you live in Harlem. If that little girl ain't twirling around after school, what do you think she's going to be doing? Like one of my friends, she was like, oh, you know, my son's not behaving. I don't think I'm going to send him to summer camp. Girl, you better find some other way of disciplining, because if you live, especially if you live in a high-risk area, and you take away things like camp and dancing and art and music and band and things like that, that's the sports, and that may be the wrong way to go, because then you leave an idle child there who does not get a chance to benefit from the positive structure of that activity. So you have to kind of think about that. When I was young, my parents took away my word processor, stopped me from writing. That really only hindered my ability as an author. They also took away my sewing machine, which really hindered my ability as a person who sews. Like I feel that, I was still able to watch TV. So it's like you take away the sewing machine, but the person is still watching TV. That's a bad message. You take away the ability to write, but the person can still watch TV. And with that little girl, if she wants to have sex, she's going to find a way to have sex. So you got to be preemptive. If she feels that she's grown enough at 13 for sex, have a conversation with her. because you ain't gonna beat the desire out of her. If anything, you're only going to increase that desire, and she'll find another way. Except, especially if she's trying to self-abuse, she'll find a way to abuse herself in some other way, or she'll find a way to get that sex however she wants to. You can't. I'm out of here. Listen, my website is down below, TanyaTKO.com. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and I'm out. I'm out. It's just, I hope this video touched somebody. Your words last year touched me. Peace.